She didn't belong here. That's what the flight attendant whispered to her colleague as 19-year-old Chloe stepped onto the plane. 10 minutes later, Chloe was in handcuffs, tears streaming down her face as 3 police officers dragged her down the aisle of the first-class cabin. The flight attendant, Jessica, stood there with a smug grin, thinking she had just protected the flight. She thought she had won. But she had no idea that the man walking up the jet bridge at that exact moment, the man whose private signature was on her paycheck, was Chloe's father. And when he stepped through that door, the silence that hit the cabin was louder than a scream. You are not going to believe the instant karma that hit this woman. The automatic doors of JFK Terminal 4 slid open, letting in a gust of biting December wind. Chloe Adele pulled her oversized Yale University hoodie tighter around her frame. She was 19, exhausted, and just wanted to go home. Final exams had been brutal, and after a 48-hour study bender, she looked less like the heiress to a global logistics empire and more like a tired student who had rolled out of bed 5 minutes ago. She adjusted her backpack, checking the time on her phone. She was cutting it close for Flight 882 to London Heathrow. Chloe wasn't flying private today. Her father, Robert Adele, had insisted she fly commercial this time. "It keeps you grounded," he always said. Though he compromised by booking her into the first-class cabin of the airline, his investment firm had recently acquired a majority stake in Oceanic Air. She approached the check-in counter. The lines for economy were winding back toward the entrance, a chaotic snake of frustrated families and crying toddlers. Chloe bypassed them, heading straight for the crimson-carpeted lane marked Priority Access, First Class and Diamond members. Standing at the podium at the entrance of the lane was a woman named Jessica Miller. Jessica was in her late 30s, with hair sprayed into a helmet of blonde perfection and a uniform that was immaculately pressed. She had been flying for 15 years, and in her mind, the first-class cabin was her personal kingdom. She decided who was worthy of comfort and who was merely tolerated. Today, Jessica was already in a foul mood. Her transfer request to the Dubai route had been denied again, and she was stuck working the holiday rush to London. When she saw Chloe approaching, a young black girl in sweatpants, wearing headphones and a hoodie, Jessica's eyes narrowed. She stepped out from behind the podium, physically blocking Chloe's path. "Excuse me," Jessica said, her voice dripping with that sickeningly sweet tone that barely masked her hostility. "The economy line starts back there, sweetie. You're in the wrong lane." Chloe paused, pulling her headphones down around her neck. She blinked, confused. "Oh no, I'm on this flight. I'm just checking in." "I understand that," Jessica said, pointing a manicured finger toward the chaotic economy line. "But this lane is for priority passengers, first class and diamond members only. You need to wait your turn like everyone else." Chloe took a deep breath. She dealt with this kind of subtle friction often, but she was too tired to fight. She simply pulled out her phone and pulled up her boarding pass. "I am first class," Chloe said calmly, holding the screen up. "Seat 1A. Jessica didn't even look at the QR code. She looked at Chloe's shoes, scuffed Nike Dunks, and then back at her face. She let out a short, dismissive laugh. "Seat 1A?" Jessica repeated, loud enough for the businessman behind Chloe to hear. He chuckled, checking his Rolex. "Honey, Seat 1A is usually reserved for full-fare dignitaries. Did you use your mummy's miles? Or maybe you're trying to pull a fast one with a screenshot?" "It's my ticket," Chloe said, her voice hardening. "Can you just scan it?" Jessica crossed her arms. "I need to see ID, and the credit card used to book the flight. We've had a lot of fraud lately." The businessman behind Chloe sighed loudly. "Come on, let's go," I have a meeting in London. I'm sorry, sir. Jessica beamed at him, her demeanor instantly shifting to deferential. Just trying to keep the cabin secure. We can't just let anyone wander in. She turned back to Chloe, her smile vanishing. ID. Now. Chloe fumbled in her bag and pulled out her passport. She handed it over. Jessica opened it, scanning the details. Chloe Adele. The last name didn't ring a bell for Jessica. Robert Adele kept his family life incredibly private. His children weren't in the tabloids. To Jessica, Adele was just a name. She scrutinized the photo, then Chloe's face. This photo looks different. It was taken 2 years ago, Chloe said. Look, can you just scan the boarding pass? The gate closes in 20 minutes. Jessica held the passport for another long, agonizing 10 seconds, hoping Chloe would crack or admit she was in the wrong place. But Chloe just stared back, defiant. Finally, with a huff of annoyance, Jessica snatched the scanner, beeped the phone, and shoved the passport back at Chloe. The light on the podium turned green. Fine, Jessica snapped. But keep your noise down in the cabin. The people in first class actually paid to be there to work and sleep. They don't need... She gestured vaguely at Chloe's outfit. Distractions. I'll try not to breathe too loud, Chloe muttered as she walked past. What was that? Jessica challenged. Nothing, Chloe said, walking briskly toward security. Jessica watched her go, her jaw tight. She picked up the phone at the podium and dialed the gate agent. Hey, Brenda, it's Jessica. Yeah, I'm heading to the gate now. Listen, I've got a code 4 coming your way. Seat 1A. Yeah, looks like a non-rev or a lottery winner. Attitude problem. Keep an eye on her. I don't want her thinking she runs the place just because she got a lucky upgrade. Jessica hung up, smoothing her skirt. She hated when people didn't know their place. She decided right then and there, Chloe Adele was going to have the most miserable flight Jessica could arrange. Boarding began 20 minutes later. The first-class cabin on the Boeing 777 was luxurious, lie-flat pods, champagne service, and hushed lighting. Chloe found seat 1A. It was the prime spot, right at the front, offering the most privacy. She tossed her backpack into the overhead bin and settled into the leather seat, instantly reclining it slightly. She put her headphones back on, closing her eyes. She just wanted to sleep. But peace wasn't on the menu. Jessica was the purser for this flight, meaning she was in charge of the cabin crew. As she welcomed passengers aboard, her eyes kept darting to seat 1A. It irritated her viscerally to see the girl in the hoodie looking so comfortable in a seat that cost $12,000. A man named Mr. Henderson boarded next. He was a frequent flyer, a Diamond Medallion member who always brought chocolates for the crew. He was seated in 1B, right across the aisle from Chloe. "Good evening, Jessica," Mr. Henderson boomed. "Mr. Henderson, so good to see you," Jessica gushed, taking his coat. "We have your usual scotch ready for after takeoff." Henderson looked across the aisle at Chloe, who was scrolling on her phone. He frowned. "Is the cabin full tonight?" "Unfortunately, yes." Jessica lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Though some upgrades were questionable." Henderson scoffed. "I see. Well, hopefully it stays quiet." "I'll make sure of it," Jessica promised. 10 minutes before departure, the trouble started. Chloe was thirsty. She hadn't had water since she entered the airport. She saw Jessica walking down the aisle with a tray of pre-departure drinks, champagne and orange juice in crystal flutes. Jessica served Mr. Henderson, chatting about the weather in London. Then she served the couple in 2A and 2B. She completely bypassed seat 1A. Chloe took off her headphones. "Excuse me?" Jessica stopped, her back to Chloe. She turned slowly, her eyebrows raised in mock surprise. "Yes. Could I get some water, please? We're holding water service until we're in the air. Jessica lied smoothly. Safety regulations. Chloe frowned. You just gave that man a scotch. Mr. Henderson is a Diamond member. We have special protocols for our frequent flyers, Jessica said, her voice loud enough for the cabin to hear. Maybe if you flew more, you'd know that. Chloe felt the heat rise in her cheeks. I'm in first class. The service is supposed to be the same. Jessica stepped into Chloe's personal space, leaning over the pod. Listen to me, she hissed, her voice dropping to a menacing whisper. You might have scammed a ticket or used Daddy's miles, but you are a guest in my cabin. Don't snap your fingers at me. You wait until I'm ready. I didn't snap my fingers, Chloe said, her voice shaking slightly with anger. I just asked for water. You're being disruptive, Jessica stated loudly, standing up straight so the other passengers could hear. Miss, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice. You are disturbing Mr. Henderson. Mr. Henderson, emboldened by the flight attendant, chimed in. She's right, young lady. Stop harassing the staff. Some of us have work to do. I haven't done anything. Chloe looked around, incredulous. She skipped me for drinks and I asked for water. That's it, Jessica said. She marched to the front of the cabin and picked up the interphone, pretending to call the cockpit. She held it for a moment, whispering nothing, then hung up. She walked back to Chloe with a gleam of triumph in her eyes. I just spoke to the captain, Jessica lied. He says we have a weight and balance issue in the front cabin. We need to move one passenger to economy to balance the trim for takeoff. Chloe stared at her. What? That makes no sense. The plane is huge. It's physics, sweetie, Jessica said condescendingly. And since you are on the lowest fare class, an upgrade ticket, you're the one who has to move. I have a seat for you in 34B. It's a middle seat, but it'll get you to London. I paid full fare for this seat, Chloe protested, unbuckling her seatbelt. I am not moving. Show me the captain's order. Are you refusing a crew member's instruction? Jessica's voice went shrill. Because that is a federal offence. Do you want to go to London, or do you want to go to jail? The cabin fell silent. Mr. Henderson looked uncomfortable but stayed quiet. A woman in row 3 looked concerned, but didn't want to get involved. Chloe's hands were trembling. She knew this was wrong. She knew her father would be furious. But she also knew that if she made a scene, they would kick her off, and she wouldn't make it home for her mother's memorial service the next day. That was the whole reason she was flying. Tomorrow was the anniversary of her mother's passing. She couldn't miss it. I'm not moving unless the captain comes out here and tells me himself, Chloe said firmly. Jessica smiled. It was a cold, predatory smile. Okay, Jessica said. Have it your way. She turned around and walked briskly to the main door, where the gate agent was standing. Get the police, Jessica said loudly. I have a passenger in 1A who is becoming violent and refusing to follow safety protocols. I want her off this plane, now. Chloe's heart hammered against her ribs. She pulled out her phone and frantically dialed her father's personal number. Ring. 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 Come on, Dad, pick up, she whispered. You've reached the voicemail of Robert Adele. Please leave a message. Dad, Chloe whispered into the phone, tears welling up. Dad, I'm on the plane. The flight attendant is crazy. She's calling the cops on me. I'm in seat 1A. Please, if you get this, call the airline. Help me. She hung up just as heavy boots thudded onto the jet bridge. 2 Port Authority police officers entered the aircraft. They looked annoyed to be called for a disturbance. Where is she? One officer asked. Jessica pointed a shaking finger at Chloe. Right there. Seat 1A. She's been screaming, throwing water, and she threatened to assault me when I asked her to fasten her seatbelt. It was a lie so bold, so complete, that for a second Chloe couldn't even speak. "That's a lie," Chloe screamed, standing up. "I never touched water. She wouldn't give me any." "Sit down," the officer barked, his hand resting on his taser. "Ma'am, sit down now." The drama had just begun, and Jessica had no idea that the voicemail Chloe just left was about to be heard by the most powerful man in the aviation industry. The atmosphere in the first-class cabin shifted from awkward tension to suffocating fear. The two Port Authority officers, Officer Davis and Officer Kowalski, loomed over Chloe. They were big men, their uniforms stiff and imposing, their hands resting near their belts. They saw exactly what Jessica wanted them to see. A young black woman in a hoodie, out of place, in luxury, allegedly causing a scene. "Ma'am, stand up," Officer Davis commanded. His voice wasn't a request, it was a kinetic hammer. Chloe pressed her back into the leather of seat 1A, her heart beating so fast she felt dizzy. "I haven't done anything," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "Please just ask the other passengers. Ask him." She pointed a shaking finger at Mr. Henderson across the aisle. "He saw everything. I just asked for water." Officer Davis looked at Mr. Henderson. The businessman looked uncomfortable. He glanced at Jessica, who was standing behind the police with a look of practiced distress, wringing her hands theatrically. "Sir," Officer Davis asked Henderson, "did this passenger threaten the flight attendant?" The cabin held its breath. This was the moment for truth. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. He just wanted to go to London. He didn't want to get involved in a legal battle. He didn't want to be delayed to give a statement. And, subconsciously, he trusted the woman in the uniform more than the girl in the hoodie. She was being very loud," Henderson muttered, avoiding Chloe's eyes. "She was arguing about the seat. It was disruptive." Chloe gasped, a sound of pure betrayal. "You liar! You were watching the whole time!" "That's enough!" Officer Kowalski snapped. He reached down and grabbed Chloe's upper arm. His grip was like a vice. "Don't touch me!" Chloe shrieked, instinctively pulling her arm back. "Stop resisting!" Kowalski roared. The magic words, "Stop resisting," it gave them permission to escalate. In a blur of motion, Chloe was yanked out of the lie-flat seat. Her phone clattered to the floor, sliding under the seat in front of her. She was spun around, her face pressed against the bulkhead wall. The cold steel of handcuffs clicked around her wrists, biting into her skin. "You are hurting me," Chloe cried out, tears finally spilling over. "My dad. Call my dad. Robert Adele. Check the manifest." Yeah, we know. Your dad is the president," Officer Davis scoffed, tightening the cuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." Jessica stood by the cockpit door, shaking her head sadly for the benefit of the other passengers. "I am so sorry, everyone," she said, her voice trembling with fake emotion. "I tried to de-escalate, but she just became so aggressive. Safety is our #1 priority at Oceanic Air. Get her off the plane," Jessica whispered to the officers as they hauled Chloe upright. "Before she bites someone." The walk down the aisle was the longest minute of Chloe's life. Because the jet bridge was attached to the second door, they didn't exit through the front. They had to walk her through the first-class cabin, past the galley, and through the front section of business class to the exit. Every head turned. Passengers in business class, who had no idea what had happened, craned their necks to see the criminal. Phones were out. Flashes went off. Chloe hung her head, humiliation burning her skin like acid. She saw the judgment in their eyes. Troublemaker, criminal, thug. She wasn't Chloe Adele, Yale student, daughter of a billionaire, grieving daughter flying to a memorial. She was just a spectacle. "Move it," Kowalski grunted, shoving her forward. As they passed the galley, Chloe locked eyes with Jessica one last time. Jessica was holding a glass of champagne, ready to resume service the second the trash was taken out. Jessica offered a tiny, almost imperceptible smirk. It was a look of pure victory. "I own this space," the look said. "You are nothing." They dragged Chloe out onto the jet bridge. The cold air hit her face, drying her tears, but doing nothing to cool the rage building in her gut. "My phone," Chloe stammered as they marched her up the incline toward the terminal. "My phone is still on the plane." "We'll get your bags later," Davis said dismissively. "Right now, you're going to the precinct for processing. Assault on a flight crew member is a felony, kid. Hope you like prison food." They reached the top of the jet bridge. The gate area was crowded with economy passengers waiting to board. A hush fell over the crowd as they saw the police dragging a crying girl in handcuffs. Suddenly, Officer Davis's radio chirped. "Dispatch to Unit 4 Alpha. Hold position at Gate B12. Do not, I repeat, do not transport the suspect." Davis frowned, pressing the button on his shoulder mic. "Dispatch, we have the suspect in custody. We are moving to transport." "Negative 4 Alpha. Hold position immediately. We have a situation. The Airport Authority Director is on his way to you. ETA 2 minutes. Davis and Kowalski exchanged a confused look. The Airport Authority Director? That was the big boss. He never came down to the gates. He sat in a glass tower and managed budgets. "What did you do, kid?" Kowalski asked, looking at Chloe with a sudden flicker of doubt. "Who did you really call?" Chloe sniffled, standing tall despite the cuffs. "I told you, I called my dad." Back on the plane, the atmosphere had relaxed. The threat was gone. Jessica Miller was feeling invincible. She had successfully defended her turf. She smoothed her skirt and walked into the cockpit to give the pilot the all-clear. "Captain, the disruptive passenger has been removed," Jessica said brightly. "Police have her. We can close the doors and push back on time." Captain Miller, no relation, a gruff veteran pilot, nodded. "Good work, Jessica. Hate to leave with a seat empty up front, but we can't risk safety. Let's get the paperwork signed later. Tell the gate to pull the bridge." "Will do," Jessica chirped. She walked back to the galley. She picked up the manifest, the list of passengers. She wanted to double-check who was in seat 1A to write her report. She had been so angry she hadn't really looked at the name, only the face. She scanned the list. 1A. Adele, Chloe. She paused. Adele. "That's a nice last name," she muttered to her junior flight attendant, Sarah. "Sounds expensive." Sarah, who was young and currently scrolling through TikTok in the galley while they waited for the door to close, looked up. Her face went pale. "Jessica," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "Did you say the passenger's name was Adele?" "Yeah, Chloe Adele." "Why?" Sarah turned her phone screen toward Jessica. It was a news article from Forbes that had popped up on her feed earlier that day. The headline read, "Logistics titan Robert Adele acquires Oceanic Air, promises new era of luxury." Beneath the headline was a photo of Robert Adele, a tall, imposing black man with a shaved head and a tailored suit, standing next to a private jet. And standing next to him, smiling shyly, was a teenage girl. The girl in the hoodie. Jessica felt the blood drain from her face. It felt like the floor of the aircraft had suddenly dropped away. Her hands went numb, and the manifest fluttered to the floor. "No," Jessica whispered. "No, that's not possible." She was wearing sweatpants. "That's his daughter," Sarah whispered, terrified. "Jessica, you just arrested the owner's daughter." Before Jessica could process the catastrophic terror rising in her throat, a commotion erupted at the front of the plane. Usually, the sound of the jet bridge door closing is a heavy, sealing thud. But this time, there was no thud. There was shouting from the gate agent. "Sir, you can't go down there. The flight is closed! Get out of my way!" A deep, baritone voice boomed. It wasn't a shout. It was a command of such absolute authority that it vibrated through the fuselage. Jessica froze. She looked toward the open cabin door. 2 men in dark suits, private security, stepped onto the plane first, scanning the cabin with earpieces in. They looked like Secret Service. Then he walked in. Robert Adele was 6'4". He was wearing a charcoal wool coat over a suit that cost more than Jessica's car. He didn't look angry. He looked like the apocalypse. His eyes were cold, calculating, and currently scanning the cabin with the precision of a predator looking for a kill. Behind him, looking terrified, was the gate agent, Brenda. And behind her, stepping back onto the plane, were Officers Davis and Kowalski, with Chloe. Chloe was still in handcuffs. Her face was puffy from crying. When Robert Adele saw the handcuffs on his daughter's wrists, the air in the cabin seemed to drop 10 degrees. He stopped. He didn't yell. He simply pointed a finger at Officer Davis. "Uncuff her," Robert said. His voice was quiet, deadly. "Sir, this is a crime scene," Officer Davis started, his bravado fading fast as he looked at the man. "I said," Robert took a step closer, "take the handcuffs off my daughter. Now, or I will have your badge, your pension, and your freedom by morning." Officer Kowalski recognized him. He had seen the briefings about VIPs at the airport. He fumbled for his keys, his hands shaking. "Yes, sir. Right away, sir." The cuffs clicked open. Chloe rubbed her wrists, letting out a sob. Robert immediately pulled her into a hug, wrapping his expensive coat around her. He held her tight, kissing the top of her head, whispering things no one else could hear. For a moment, he was just a father. Then he released her and turned to face the cabin. He looked at Mr. Henderson, who was now pretending to be asleep in 1B. He looked at the other passengers. And then his eyes locked on the galley. Jessica was shrinking into the corner, trying to make herself invisible behind a beverage cart. Robert Adele walked slowly down the aisle of the first-class cabin. His footsteps were heavy. He stopped right in front of the galley. He towered over Jessica. "Are you the purser?" Robert asked. Jessica opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She nodded, her eyes wide with terror. "I received a voicemail," Robert said, holding up his phone. He pressed a button. Chloe's terrified voice filled the silent cabin. "Dad, I'm on the plane. The flight attendant is crazy. She's calling the cops on me. Help me." Robert stopped the playback. He looked at Jessica with disgust. "My daughter," Robert said, enunciating every word, "was flying home for her mother's memorial. My wife died 1 year ago tomorrow. Chloe hasn't slept in 2 days. And you decided that because she didn't look like she belonged in your cabin, you would treat her like a criminal?" "Sir, Jessica's voice was a squeak. There was a misunderstanding. She refused to move seats. She was in seat 1A, Robert said calmly. "I know this because I bought the ticket. I bought the seat. In fact," he paused, looking around the interior of the plane, "I bought the whole damn airline this morning." A collective gasp went through the cabin. Mr. Henderson's eyes popped open. "I finalized the acquisition of Oceanic Air at 9 a.m., Robert continued. "Which means Ms." He leaned in to read her name tag. "Ms. Miller. I am not just a passenger. I am not just a father. I am your employer." Jessica began to cry, real ugly tears of panic. "Mr. Adele, please, I didn't know. If you had known she was rich, you would have treated her with respect." Robert cut her off. "Is that it? You treat people with dignity only when you think they have power." He turned to the frantic-looking captain, who had just emerged from the cockpit. "Captain," Robert said. "Mr. Adele," the captain stammered. I had no idea you were. This flight is cancelled, Robert said. Sir? The captain blinked. Cancelled? We have 300 passengers. I don't care, Robert said. This crew is compromised. This aircraft is now a crime scene as far as I am concerned. I am filing charges for assault against my daughter, false imprisonment, and defamation. He turned back to Jessica. Pack your bag, Robert said softly. Please, Jessica begged. I need this job. I have a mortgage. Please give me a warning. You don't have a job, Robert said. You are fired, effective immediately, and you won't be flying for any other airline either. I'll make sure the FAA receives a full report on your conduct regarding passenger safety profiling. You are done. Robert turned to his security team. Escort Ms. Miller off my plane and get the police to take her statement. I want her charged with filing a false police report. Me! Jessica shrieked as the security guard stepped forward. But now! Robert roared, his control finally snapping. The security guards grabbed Jessica by the arms, much gentler than the police had grabbed Chloe, but firm. They marched her down the aisle. As she passed seat 1A, Chloe was sitting there, her father's arm around her. Jessica looked at Chloe, hoping for mercy. Chloe just looked at her, her eyes tired and sad. I just wanted some water, Chloe whispered. Robert stood up. He looked at the passengers. My team will arrange hotels and rebooking for everyone in economy and business. You will all receive full refunds and travel vouchers for the inconvenience. He looked down at Mr. Henderson in 1B. Henderson was shrinking into his seat. And you, Robert said to Henderson, the man who witnessed everything and said nothing. Henderson swallowed hard. Mr. Adele, I didn't want to cause trouble. You have a diamond medallion status with us? Robert asked. Yes, for 10 years. Not anymore, Robert said. Ban him. Lifetime. Robert turned to his daughter. Come on, sweetie. The private jet is fueled up at the hangar. We're going home properly. He guided Chloe off the plane, leaving a stunned cabin, a terrified captain, and a wailing Jessica Miller being read her rights on the jet bridge by the very officers she had called. But the story wasn't over. The karma was just warming up. Jessica Miller sat in the back of an Uber, watching the rain streak against the window. She had been escorted out of the terminal not by police, they had released her pending further investigation, but by airport security, who had stripped her of her badge in front of her colleagues. Her hands were shaking uncontrollably. She kept telling herself it was a nightmare. He can't fire me, she thought, her mind racing with desperate justifications. I have a union. I followed protocol. She was disruptive. It's my word against hers. She pulled out her phone. She wanted to call her union representative. But the moment she unlocked her screen, notifications began to cascade down the glass like a waterfall. Instagram, 99+ notifications. Twitter X, you have been tagged in a post by Flying High Mike. TikTok, is this you? Sent by 15 people. Her stomach churned. Her thumb hovered over the Twitter icon. She pressed it. The top trending topic in the United States was flight attendant Karen. Jessica tapped the hashtag. The first video was from a user named TechBroTravels, the passenger who had been sitting in 2A, the young man wearing the noise-cancelling headphones, who she thought was asleep. He hadn't been asleep. The video was crystal clear. It started way before the arrest. The caption read, "Witnessed the most insane discrimination in first class today. Oceanic air purser refuses water to a girl, then frames her. Watch till the end." Jessica watched the video in horror. The angle showed everything. It showed Chloe sitting quietly, reading. It showed Jessica walking by with the drink tray. "Excuse me?" Chloe's voice was polite. "We're holding water service until we're in the air." Jessica's voice on the video was dripping with condescension. Then, the video cut to the confrontation. It showed Jessica leaning over the pod, hissing, "You might have scammed a ticket. Don't snap your fingers at me." The video clearly showed Chloe's hands in her lap, nowhere near snapping. Then came the piece de resistance. The user had kept recording when Jessica went to the interphone. The camera zoomed in. It showed Jessica holding the phone to her ear, pressing 0 buttons, and talking to absolutely no one before hanging up and claiming the captain wanted Chloe moved. The lie was caught in 4K resolution. Jessica stopped the video, unable to breathe. The views were climbing. 2.1 million. 3.5 million. It was spreading like a virus. She scrolled to the comments. Sarah J. OMG, her name is Jessica Miller. I flew with her last month. She was so rude to an elderly couple. Justice for Chloe. She pretended to call the captain. That's psychopathic behavior. Dan Lawyer. This isn't just rude. This is actionable fraud. She falsified a security threat. She's going to jail. Robert Adelphan. Wait, is that Chloe Adele? That flight attendant just messed with the wrong family. Rip her career. The Uber driver glanced at her in the rearview mirror. He was looking at her, then looking at a phone mounted on his dashboard that was playing a news clip. He looked back at her, his eyes narrowing. "You're the lady," the driver said, his voice hard. "From the video." "Just drive," Jessica snapped. "No," the driver said. He pulled the car over to the curb on the side of the highway, amidst the pouring rain. "Get out." "What? You can't do that." "It's my car," the driver said. "And I don't drive racists. Get out before I call the cops myself." Jessica was forced to stand on the side of the Van Wyck Expressway in the rain, her expensive uniform soaking through, dragging her flight bag through the mud. As she stood there, shivering, a car drove past and honked. She looked at her phone again. An email had just come through. It wasn't from the airline. It was from her landlord. Subject: Notice to vacate Ms. Miller due to the violation of the morality clause in your lease agreement regarding criminal activity and public nuisance. We are terminating your tenancy effective immediately. It had been less than 2 hours. Her life wasn't just cracking, it was shattering into dust. 3 months later. The conference room at the law firm of Bradford, Cohen and Adele was made of glass and mahogany, overlooking the Manhattan skyline. The air conditioning was set to a crisp 68 degrees. But Jessica Miller was sweating profusely. She sat on one side of the massive table. Beside her was a court-appointed public defender named Greg, who looked overworked and tired. Jessica couldn't afford a private attorney. Her savings had evaporated in the first month of unemployment. On the other side of the table sat 3 lawyers in suits that cost more than Jessica's former annual salary. In the center sat Robert Adele. He wasn't looking at papers. He was looking at her. "Ms. Miller," the lead attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Eleanor Vance, began. "We are here to discuss the civil suit filed by Miss Chloe Adele regarding defamation, emotional distress, and malicious prosecution." "I didn't prosecute her," Jessica mumbled, her voice hoarse. She looked terrible. Her roots had grown out, her face was gaunt, and the arrogance that had defined her career was completely gone. "You filed a false police report," Eleanor corrected sharply, "which led to her being handcuffed and publicly humiliated. The criminal charges against you for filing that false report are pending with the district attorney, but today we are discussing the civil damages." Greg, Jessica's lawyer, cleared his throat. "Look, my client has no assets. She's unemployed. She's currently living in a motel. You can't get blood from a stone. Suing her for $10 million is symbolic, but pointless." Robert Adele leaned forward. The wood of the table creaked under his elbows. "It's not about the money," Robert said. His voice was calm, which made it more terrifying. It's about the record. He slid a file across the table. We have done a forensic audit of your career, Ms. Miller, Robert said. Since the video went viral, 24 other passengers have come forward with affidavits. It seems you have a habit of targeting minority passengers, families with young children, and anyone you deem unworthy of first class. Jessica stared at the file. She saw names and dates she had forgotten. The couple she moved for weight balance in 2022. The man she threatened with the FBI in 2024. I was just doing my job, she whispered weakly. Safety. Stop, Robert said. Just stop lying, for once in your life. He signaled to Eleanor. Here is the settlement offer, Eleanor said. We will drop the demand for $10 million. We don't need your money. Jessica let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Okay, thank you. However, Eleanor continued, you will agree to the following terms. 1. You will record a public video apology to Chloe Adele, admitting you lied. 2. You will never work in the aviation, hospitality, or customer service industry again. If you apply for a job where you have authority over another human being, we will violate the settlement and pursue the full $10 million. What am I supposed to do? Jessica cried. I've been a flight attendant since I was 22. It's all I know. Learn something else, Robert said coldly. Maybe a job where you don't have power. I hear the warehouse at my logistics company is hiring packers. Minimum wage. No talking. Just boxes. Jessica looked at her lawyer. Greg shrugged. It's the best deal you're going to get, Jessica. If we go to trial, a jury will destroy you. The video is damning. With a trembling hand, Jessica signed the paper. She signed away her career, her reputation, and her future. As she stood up to leave, broken and defeated, Robert spoke one last time. Oh, and Ms. Miller, you might want to check the news about your friend, Mr. Henderson. Jessica paused at the door. Who? The man in 1B, the one who lied for you. Jessica walked out of the office and pulled out her cracked phone. She Googled Arthur Henderson. The headline from the Wall Street Journal popped up. CFO Arthur Henderson, fired from Goldman Sachs after perjury allegations in airline incident. The article detailed how Robert Adele's legal team had subpoenaed the security footage and proved Henderson lied to the police. His firm, terrified of the PR backlash and losing Adele's investment accounts, had fired him immediately. His wife had filed for divorce the following week after the embarrassment caused them to be uninvited from the country club. Henderson had lost his multi-million-dollar job because he didn't want to speak up for a 19-year-old girl. Jessica walked out of the building into the bright Manhattan sunlight. People were walking by, laughing, talking, living their lives. But for her, the world had turned grey. She walked to the subway station. She didn't have money for an Uber anymore. She swiped her Metro card. Insufficient funds. She stood at the turnstile, tears streaming down her face. A young black woman, about Chloe's age, noticed her standing there, looking hopeless. "Excuse me, ma'am?" the young woman said kindly. "Do you need a swipe?" Jessica looked up. The girl had the same kindness in her eyes that Chloe had when she just asked for water. Jessica burst into sobbing tears. She couldn't take the kindness. It burned worse than the insults. She turned and ran out of the station, out onto the street, having finally realized the weight of what she had done. She had treated royalty like trash, and now she was the one in the gutter. And somewhere, high above the clouds in a Gulf Stream G650, Chloe Adele was sipping a glass of water, looking out at the horizon, finally at peace. The alarm clock on the bedside table didn't buzz. It screamed. It was a jagged, mechanical shriek that pierced the thin walls of the Starlight Motel, a dilapidated roadside establishment just off the New Jersey Turnpike. It was 4:15 a.m. Jessica Miller lay in the dark for a moment, staring at the water-stained ceiling. For a split second, that merciful, fleeting moment between sleep and wakefulness, she forgot. She thought she was back in her condo in Queens. She thought she had a 10 a.m. show time for a flight to Paris. She thought she could smell the freshly brewed espresso from her Nespresso machine. Then, the smell hit her. Not espresso, but the stale scent of cigarette smoke that had seeped into the motel carpet decades ago and never left. The damp, mouldy odor of a room that cost $49 a night. Reality crashed down like a physical blow. Paris was gone. The condo was gone. The espresso machine had been sold on eBay 3 months ago to pay a court fine. Jessica sat up, her back seizing with a sharp spasm. She was 39 years old, but her body felt 60. She swung her legs out of the lumpy bed and shuffled to the bathroom. The mirror was cracked in the corner. She looked at her reflection. The blonde helmet of hair was gone, replaced by a messy ponytail with dark roots showing 3 inches of growth. Her skin, once glowing from expensive serums, was grey and tired. She splashed cold water on her face. She had to hurry. If she was 1 minute late to the warehouse, they would dock her pay for the entire hour. The commute was a 40-minute bus ride, followed by a 20-minute walk through an industrial park that felt like the edge of the world. By the time Jessica swiped her badge at the employee entrance of Global Fulfillment Center Naro 4, her feet were already throbbing. She wasn't Jessica Miller, purser and senior flight attendant anymore. Here, she was employee 99942. The warehouse was a cavernous beast of a building, 1 million square feet of concrete and steel under harsh fluorescent lights that buzzed with a headache-inducing hum. It smelled of cardboard dust, diesel fumes from the forklifts, and the sweat of 500 people working minimum wage. She walked to her station, locker 4B, and pulled on her vest. It was neon orange, ill-fitting, and smelled like the person who had worn it on the previous shift. "Well, look who decided to grace us with her presence," a voice sneered from the supervisor's podium. It was Kyle. Kyle was 22 years old, with a patchy beard and a power complex that rivaled Napoleon's. He was the shift supervisor for Section D. In Jessica's old life, she wouldn't have let Kyle carry her luggage. She would have dismissed him with a single arched eyebrow. But here, Kyle held the keys to her survival. "I'm on time, Kyle," Jessica muttered, keeping her head down. She had learned that eye contact only prolonged the torture. "Barely," Kyle said, tapping his clipboard. "Your scan rate was garbage yesterday, Miller. 200 boxes an hour is the target. You were at 180. You think this is first class? You think you can just sit around and sip champagne?" He knew. Everyone knew. When she had first started, she tried to use a fake name, but HR required legal ID. Within a week, the video of her meltdown, the infamous "Do you want to go to jail?" screech, had circulated through the warehouse group chat. Kyle stepped closer, his voice dropping to a mock whisper. "You know, if you can't handle the pace, I can move you to sanitation. They need someone to scrub the loading dock toilets. Might be more your speed." Jessica's jaw tightened until her teeth ached. "I'll get the numbers up," she said, her voice hollow. "Good," Kyle smirked. "Get to line 4. We have a priority shipment coming in. High-value goods. Don't mess it up." Jessica walked to line 4. The conveyor belt was already moving, a relentless river of commerce. Beep, scan, box, tape. Beep, scan, box, tape. The rhythm was hypnotic and soul-crushing. Her hands, which used to pour vintage Bordeaux and arrange canapes, were now dry, cracked, and covered in paper cuts. Her fingernails were short and jagged. She grabbed a bottle of generic shampoo. Scan. Box. Tape. She grabbed a set of cheap headphones. Scan. Box. Tape. 2 hours passed. Her lower back was screaming. She adjusted the heavy support belt she had to wear, wincing. "Heads up!" a worker further down the line shouted. "New pallet! Special handling!" A forklift dropped a massive pallet of sleek, navy blue boxes at the start of the line. These weren't the usual brown cardboard boxes. These were premium retail packaging. Jessica grabbed the first one. It was heavy, wrapped in a silky protective film. She turned it over to find the barcode. Her eyes caught the gold-embossed lettering on the front. The Adele collection. Travel without boundaries. Jessica froze. The scanner in her hand beeped an error code, but she didn't hear it. The warehouse noise faded into a dull roar. She stared at the box. It was a luxury travel blanket and eye mask set. The packaging was exquisite. And there, on the back of the box, was a small, high-resolution photo of the founder. It was Chloe. She looked older, wiser, and devastatingly beautiful. She was wearing a white blazer, standing on the tarmac next to a private jet, looking confident and serene. Jessica's trembling fingers traced the text below the photo. Founded by Chloe Adele, this brand is dedicated to the belief that every journey matters and every passenger deserves dignity. A portion of all profits supports the Open Skies Legal Fund, providing representation for victims of travel discrimination. Jessica felt the blood drain from her face. She was packing the products of the woman she had tried to destroy. She was the manual labor behind the empire she had inadvertently helped create. The irony was so sharp it felt like a knife in her gut. Chloe was the CEO. Jessica was the packer. The dynamic had completely inverted. "Miller, what is the hold-up?" Kyle's voice boomed across the floor. Jessica flinched, the box slipping from her numb fingers. It hit the concrete floor with a thud. "No," Jessica whispered, scrambling to pick it up. "Hey!" Kyle came sprinting over. He snatched the box from the floor, inspecting the corner. It was dented. "Are you kidding me? This is premium inventory. Do you know how much this costs?" I'm sorry, it slipped," Jessica stammered, tears pricking her eyes. "It slipped?" Kyle laughed, cruel and loud. "You used to brag about balancing drink trays in turbulence, right? And now you can't hold a box?" He held the box up, right next to Jessica's face. "Look at this face," Kyle said, pointing to Chloe's picture. "You know who this is, right?" "Of course you do. She's the reason you're here." "Please," Jessica whispered. "Don't." "She's a billionaire now," Kyle continued, twisting the knife. "And you're making $15 an hour packing her blankets. How does that feel, Miller? How does it feel to work for her?" Jessica looked around. Other workers had stopped to watch. They weren't sympathetic. They were entertained. They saw a bully getting bullied, a woman who had thought she was better than everyone finally being brought low. Jessica couldn't breathe. The walls of the warehouse seemed to be closing in. She stripped off her gloves. "I can't," she sobbed. I can't do this." "You can't?" Kyle's face hardened. "Fine, then clock out. But if you walk off the line, don't come back. There are 50 people waiting for this job who won't drop the merchandise." Jessica looked at the exit. The sunlight was streaming through the open bay doors, miles away. She looked at her bank account balance in her mind. $142. Rent was due in 3 days. If she walked out, she was homeless. It was that simple. She had no savings, no family who would speak to her, no references. She looked at Kyle. She looked at the dented box with Chloe's smiling face. She swallowed her pride. It tasted like ash. "No," Jessica whispered, her head bowing in total defeat. I need the hours." "That's what I thought," Kyle smirked, tossing the dented box into a reject bin. "Get back to work, and be careful. That's your boss you're handling." Beep, scan, box, tape. The rest of the shift was a blur of misery. Jessica worked through the tears that streamed silently down her face, soaking into her cheap face mask. She packed hundreds of Chloe's products. Every single one was a reminder of her mistake. Every single one was a gravestone for her past life. When the whistle finally blew at 6 p.m., Jessica stumbled out of the warehouse. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, the kind of sunset she used to watch from 35,000 feet, sipping a coffee in the galley while the world slept beneath her. She walked to the bus stop, her boots dragged in the gravel. Above her, the roar of jet engines tore through the sky. Newark Airport was only a few miles away. She looked up. A massive Boeing 777 was climbing steeply, its lights blinking against the darkening sky. It was heading to London, or Paris, or Tokyo. For 20 years she had been up there. She had belonged to the sky. She had held the keys to the kingdom, and she had thrown them away because she didn't like the way a teenage girl looked in a hoodie. She watched the plane until it was just a speck of light among the stars. A cold wind blew across the industrial lot, cutting through her thin jacket. Jessica pulled her collar up, shivering. She sat on the rusted metal bench, waiting for the bus that would take her back to the motel, back to the silence, back to the nothingness she had earned. The bus arrived with a hiss of brakes. The doors opened. "You getting on or what?" the driver asked impatiently. Jessica stepped up, fumbling for her pass. The machine beeped. Insufficient fare. I just need to reload it," she pleaded, searching her pockets for loose change. "Machine's broken," the driver said, staring straight ahead. "Exact change only, or get off." Jessica stood there, clutching 2 quarters and a dime. She was 50 cents short. "Please," she whispered. "It's freezing." The driver looked at her. He looked at her tired eyes, her grey skin, her desperate posture. He recognized the look. It was the look of someone who had hit rock bottom. He closed the doors. "Step back," he said. "Wait," Jessica cried, slapping the glass. But the bus pulled away, spewing exhaust into the cold night air, leaving her standing alone under the flickering street lamp. She watched the taillights fade, knowing she had a 5-mile walk ahead of her. Karma hadn't just hit her. It had stranded her. And as she began the long walk into the dark, she finally understood the true weight of the power she had abused. She had tried to ground Chloe Adele, but in the end, Jessica Miller was the one who would never fly again. And that is the story of how one moment of arrogance destroyed a life and built an empire. It's a brutal reminder that you never truly know who you are talking to. Jessica Miller judged a book by its cover, assuming a hoodie meant poverty and silence. She didn't realize she was waking a sleeping giant. In the end, justice wasn't just served in a courtroom, it was served by the universe. Chloe turned her trauma into a movement, ensuring no one else would have to feel that shame again. And Jessica? She spends every day reminded that kindness costs nothing, but cruelty can cost you everything. If this story satisfied your craving for justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. What would you have done if you were Chloe? Would you have forgiven Jessica? Or did she get exactly what she deserved? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new story. We have a crazy tale coming up next week about a landlord who evicted a single mum, only to find out she was his new boss. You don't want to miss it. Thanks for watching.